Madam, online starting.
Good morning, everyone. This is Pavitra, SA Bioscience from ZPHS Gattipalli. Today we are going to learn about the topic cellular respiration. Now I am sharing my screen. Children, before entering into the topic, please think and reflect about these questions. How oxygen is transported to tissues and ultimately to cells? Where exactly energy is released in our body? In which organelle energy is released? What other products are released during energy releasing process? Do you know answers for these questions? Let us learn the answers for these questions in this lesson. Today our topic is cellular respiration. In this topic, we are going to learn about the aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. First, the learner going to learn from this lesson are explains the importance of cellular respiration, draws the diagram of mitochondrion, differentiates between aerobic and anaerobic respiration, gives reason for why do people feel pain in limbs when they do vigorous exercise, conducts experiment to show aerobic respiration in yeast, describe the process of aerobic and anaerobic respiration. These are the learning outcomes achieved by the children ultimately at the end of the lesson. First, children, what we have seen in the previous classes, how air enter into lungs and how that air reaches alveoli, and finally how that how the oxygen finally reaches into cells. Air enters into lungs through nostrils, nasal cavity, trachea, larynx, trachea, and finally into lungs. In lungs, there are small chambers present. That chambers are called as alveoli. Alveoli are the structural and functional units of lungs. Why we are calling it as structural and functional units of lungs? Total lungs are made up of alveoli chambers. And the gases exchange takes place in the alveoli only. Gases exchange means I told in the previous class, carbon dioxide leaves alveoli blood vessel to alveoli and oxygen reaches to blood. And here how the carbon dioxide leaves blood vessel and oxygen reaches blood. You can see here. That means entirely alveoli chamber is supplied with the blood vessels, isn't it? So the high concentration of carbon dioxide present in the blood leaves blood and reaches to alveoli chamber. The concentration of oxygen is high in alveoli chamber that reaches into bloodstream. That is the gases exchange here. That is the function of main role of alveoli here. That is why we are calling it as a functional unit. Entirely lungs are made up of alveoli chambers, and here especially gases exchange takes place in these chambers only. That is why we are calling it as functional unit. Alveoli are the structural and functional units of lungs. Here from blood, finally oxygen reaches into cells. The carbon dioxide which is produced in cells reaches to the bloodstream. From bloodstream to finally they reaches into alveoli to they are sent out of our body. And what happens in cells? Oxygen reaches cells. In cells, what happens? What that oxygen do in cells? What I told you, we respire, we take the air in through nasal cavity, nostrils, nasal cavity, and pharynx, larynx, trachea, lungs to alveoli to blood to finally oxygen reaches cells. What oxygen do in cells, we are going to learn today. Okay, what oxygen do in cells? Oxygen oxidizes glucose. Oxidizes means it burns glucose molecules into energy. What oxygen do in cells? It burns the glucose molecule, because of that energy produces. And also carbon dioxide, water releases in cells. That process is called cellular respiration. What happens? This energy is used by us, or this energy is used by cells. The carbon dioxide is not useful for us. So that is why we are sending back to the blood. Cells sends back the carbon dioxide into bloodstream. Bloodstream takes this carbon dioxide to the lungs, and ultimately lungs sends this carbon dioxide out of the lungs. Okay, that is the expiration process. Okay, exhalation process. Okay, children, in cellular respiration, especially respiration takes place in two ways. The first one is aerobic respiration and the second one is anaerobic respiration. On what basis respiration is categorized here means the availability of oxygen, based on the availability of oxygen. If oxygen is available to the organisms, some organisms perform aerobic respiration. That organisms uses oxygen, oxygen oxidizes food, and food releases oxygen oxidizing food. That food releases energy, carbon dioxide and water. And in some organisms, they don't have oxygen. If they don't have oxygen, at that time also respiration takes place. In absence of oxygen also respiration takes place. That type of respiration is called anaerobic respiration. Some organisms follows this anaerobic respiration. Usually what happens here, food is releases energy, carbon dioxide and ethyl alcohol here. What happens if oxygen is present? Food is changed into energy, carbon dioxide and water. If oxygen is not present, food is break down into ethyl alcohol and also carbon dioxide. In some organisms, it is also releases lactic acid. We will see which organisms releases lactic acid, which organisms releases ethyl alcohol. Okay. Mainly what you have to keep in mind, children, based on the availability of oxygen. If oxygen is available to the organisms, they perform aerobic respiration. If oxygen is not available, some organisms only capable of follow or perform anaerobic respiration. Even in the absence of oxygen also they perform respiration. Because of that respiration, they produces ethyl alcohol. Okay. See, this is the organelle which is plays a main role in respiration. The name of this organelle is mitochondrion. And this mitochondrion is singular, mitochondria are plural. I think you already seen the structure in 9th class, the structure and function of mitochondria. What are the main parts present in mitochondria? This is the outer membrane and this is the inner membrane. Outer membrane is smooth. There is no foldings over it, but inner membrane has many foldings inside it. This is the foldings are called as cristae. In the liquid present in the inside the mitochondria called as matrix. Now I want to show you the structure of mitochondria. These are the animal cells. There are different types of organelles present in a cell. You are observing the different kinds of organelles which we had already learned in 9th class about the cell organelles. This one is the mitochondria, which is in spherical shape. This is the elongated oval shaped mitochondria. Mitochondria are called as powerhouses of the cell. This is the outer membrane, which is smooth, And this is the inner membrane, has many foldings. That foldings is called cristae. The inner membrane actually acts as a semi-permeable membrane. That means it allows only useful materials. What happens in mitochondria? Glucose is oxidized to pyruvic acid, and also sugar molecules are oxidizes with the oxygen and finally releases energy. That means here food is oxidized here, because of that only ATP. ATP means energy. Energy is producing here. That is why we are calling the mitochondria as powerhouses of the cell. This is the brown fluid which we are observing is called matrix. That matrix contains many enzymes which helps for cellular respiration. Okay, children, that is the structure of mitochondria. In mitochondria, cellular respiration occurs. Why in mitochondria cellular respiration occurs means on the cristae and also in the matrix. There are some chemicals present, some enzymes present. That chemicals are enzymes which helps in respiration process. Chemicals are helps in energy releasing from the food. That is why cellular respiration occurs in mitochondria. Their food is oxidized to energy. Mitochondria is releasing energy from food. That is why we are calling mitochondria as powerhouse of the cell, because they are producing the power or energy or ATP, power in the form of ATP. Okay. Now I will explain you about the aerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration means what, children? Aerobic respiration means respiration occurs in presence of oxygen. If oxygen available only, then only aerobic respiration occurs. What happens in aerobic respiration? I told you respiration means oxygen oxidizes food material. Because of that energy, carbon dioxide, water, heat released. First, what happens in aerobic respiration? Glycolysis process occurs. Glycolysis, glyco means sugar, glucose. Lysis means breakdown. Glycolysis means breakdown of glucose molecule occurs. Glucose molecule breakdown into pyruvate. Actually, glucose molecule has 6 carbon compounds in it. Breakdown of glucose molecule happens here. Because of that, 3 carbon compound substance present, that is pyruvate. If 1 molecule of glucose break down, 2 molecules of pyruvate molecules are produced. That is glycolysis. Glycolysis means glyco means sugar, lysis means breakdown. What is glucose? What is glucose here? How glucose is formed? The food which we are taken, like chapati, rice, the vegetables which we are eating every day, that food material finally changes into glucose in digestion process. That glucose is transported to each and every cell of our body. In cells, this respiration process occurs, I told you. Glycolysis means glucose breakdown in the first step. Pyruvic acid is formed. What happens in the second step? Oxidation of pyruvate into acetyl coenzyme A. Oxidation of pyruvate means here carbon dioxide molecule is removed from pyruvate, and energy also releases. ATP molecules also produce at the second stage. Acetyl coenzyme A, 2 carbon compound molecule is produced in the second step. Pyruvate changes into acetyl CoA in the second step. What happens in the third step? That is acetyl coenzyme A participates in Krebs cycle. Krebs cycle is also called as citric acid cycle. In the Krebs cycle, what happens? Acetyl coenzyme A, 2 carbon compound, combines with OAA, oxaloacetic acid, 4 carbon compound. These two combines and participates in several reactions, and finally they form ATP. ATP is the energy form. ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and NADH, and FADH2, and carbon dioxide. These are the products of the Krebs cycle. These are the end products of the Krebs cycle. What happens in the next phase? This NADH and FADH2 participates in oxidative phosphorylation. What happens in the oxidative phosphorylation? Oxidation of NADH and FADH2. Hydrolysis of these two compounds and forms finally energy and water. Energy in the form of ATP and water is produced in this. These are the steps present in aerobic respiration. Glucose molecule finally produced ATP. ATP produced in several steps. If one glucose molecule is oxidized, totally 40 ATP molecules are produced. The net gain of ATPs are 38 because two ATP molecules are utilized in the reactions, in these reactions. So that is why if one glucose molecule is oxidized, we will get 38 ATP energy molecules. That is aerobic respiration. I will show you those steps in the form of video. First, you observe this video, you will understood how energy is produced in cells. These are the cells. Inside cell, here this is the glucose molecule. Glucose molecule is what happened to glucose molecule? Glycolysis occur, I told. Glycolysis means glucose molecule will break down. Let us see. Yes. Here two molecules are produced. These two molecules are called pyruvate. 6 molecules of glucose break down into 6 carbon molecules. Glucose, one glucose molecule breaks down to 2 molecules of pyruvate. Each pyruvate contains 3 carbons. One glucose molecule contains 6 carbons. Here 2 ATP energy molecules are produced. See, these are the pyruvates and energy produced. Electrons also released, high energy electrons also released. These pyruvates enters into mitochondria. These are the membranes of mitochondria. What happens here? That pyruvate immediately breaks down to acetyl coenzyme A. At that time, carbon dioxide molecule is released and also ATP also produced. And high energy electrons also produces. And what happens here? Electron transportation occurs. Because of electron transportation, NADH and FADH2 hydrolysis, ATP molecules are synthesized. ATP means energy is produced in the mitochondrions. Like this way aerobic respiration occurs in mitochondria. This is the membrane of mitochondria, inner membrane of mitochondria, where energy is producing. Okay, children. Next, I am moving on to anaerobic respiration. That is aerobic respiration. And now I am explaining you about anaerobic respiration. In anaerobic respiration, what is the first step? First step is glycolysis. What is the first step in aerobic respiration? There also glycolysis takes place. Here also glycolysis taking place. Glycolysis means breakdown of glucose. That glucose is produced by the food which we take in the digestion finally. Okay. The ultimate product of digestion is glucose. That glucose participates in respiration. Okay. First step is glycolysis, breakdown of glucose into pyruvate. This is the first step. Glucose is 6 carbon compound, pyruvate is 3 carbon compound. One glucose is breakdown means 2 pyruvate molecules produced. What happens in the second phase? Oxygen is not available to this pyruvate. Oxygen is absent here. Pyruvate oxygen is not oxidizing here. So that is why they perform fermentation process. Fermentation process, what happens in fermentation? Pyruvate is breakdown into ethyl alcohol and also produces energy. Carbon dioxide is also produced in this process, that is fermentation process. This fermentation process and anaerobic respiration generally seen in low order living organisms like bacteria, yeast. Bacteria, especially, I given one example, lactobacillus bacteria. If lactobacillus bacteria performs anaerobic respiration, glucose produces lactic acid, energy, and carbon dioxide. If yeast is a fungus, unicellular fungus, if yeast is perform anaerobic respiration, that yeast produces ethyl alcohol, energy, and carbon dioxide. And one interesting thing I want to tell you that muscles of humans also perform anaerobic respiration. Why muscles perform anaerobic respiration? We are taking every second oxygen air into our lungs. Then why there is a need of anaerobic respiration? We always have oxygen in our body. Means at the time of vigorous exercise, at the time of doing continuous physical work, hard work, doing fast work, then our muscles requires more and more energy. If adequate amount of oxygen is not reaches to the muscles, then what muscles do? The muscles immediately performs anaerobic respiration to release energy from food. If oxygen is not available at that time. Why means we do perform physical activity, we require more and more energy. To get more and more energy, oxygen is not available at that much amount. Then what our muscles do? Muscles require energy, so that is why they immediately go for another type of respiration, that is anaerobic. In absence of oxygen also they performs respiration, they break down the glucose molecule and forms lactic acid and energy and carbon dioxide. That is how muscles take energy and do the physical activity. What happens if lactic acid is released in our body, in the muscles? Acid, it is a acid. Because of acid, if we perform the physical activity or exercise for longer time, what happens? Our limbs gets pain. Limbs means in the muscles of legs or hands, we feel pain after doing a lot of physical work like exercise or in games activity like that. Okay, I will show you, I will tell you about this lactic acid accumulation. What happens if lactic acid is more accumulated in muscles? And this is the experiment which shows anaerobic respiration. This experiment is performed by my children. Actually, what we have to do, if we want to observe anaerobic respiration, we require the materials are glucose solution. Glucose solution means we can take sugar, crush the sugar and mix the sugar into water, then we will get the glucose solution. Or Glucon-D powder is available in the market. You can take that Glucon-D powder and mix it in the water. And then you can take that Glucon-D solution for the experiment also. Glucose solution. The second one is yeast. I told you yeast performs anaerobic respiration. So that is why we are taking yeast. This one is yeast. Yeast is available in the market. You can take you can take from your lab also. Yeast and also the paraffin wax solution. What we require? Paraffin wax solution and the test tube. The delivery tube, if you have delivery tube in your lab, glass delivery tube, you can use it. We don't have in our lab, so that is why we used one pipe. The gases which are released from glucose solution, they can enter into the lime water which we poured in this test tube. So we keep this delivery pipe into the lime water. Okay, these are the materials required to do this experiment, and we require one Bunsen burner to heat the glucose solution. First, what we have to do, we have to take the glucose solution in this conical flask, or you can take in any lab material available to you. we took the glucose solution in this conical flask, and we heat this glucose solution for a while to uh, to make sure that oxygen is not present in this glucose solution. What we have to do, we have to perform anaerobic respiration. So that is why oxygen availability should not, oxygen should not be available to the glucose. So that is why we burned, that is why we heated the glucose solution. Because of that heating, glucose escapes from the solution. Okay. Later, what we had done, we added some diazine green solution to the glucose to make sure that glucose solution does not present in it. If we add the diazine green solution to the glucose, that glucose solution changes to bluish color. If oxygen is present, if oxygen is absent in that solution, that solution immediately changes to the pink color. If the solution is changes to pink color, what we have to think, that solution does not contain the oxygen in it. So that glucose solution is ready to use for anaerobic respiration. Later, what we have to do, we have to add some yeast. We have to add some yeast particles to the glucose solution and mix it well. In glucose solution, yeast grows very fastly. And later, what we have to do, we have to pour 1 centimeter of paraffin wax. Paraffin wax, why we have to pour the paraffin wax? Paraffin wax does not allow the oxygen to enter into glucose solution. So that is why we have to pour the paraffin solution over the glucose solution like this, how we poured here. And later what we have to do, we have to keep one delivery pipe, and later we have to fix this entire conical flask with the rubber cork. Air should not enter into it. In the delivery tube, carefully we have to insert this delivery tube into test tube. That test tube contains lime water in it. And we have to close this test tube also with the sellotape. And we have to keep this entire unit aside for few hours. After few hours, what we have to do, we have to observe the lime water, and also we have to observe this glucose solution. What happened after few hours, if we observed means lime water changed to milky white. If we observe this tube, if we observe this conical flask, the smell of it is what we sense is the smell we sensed is alcoholic smell sense. That is what happened there means ethyl alcohol is produced in that. How ethyl alcohol is produced means yeast performed anaerobic respiration. Because of that anaerobic respiration, ethyl alcohol is produced here, and the gas produced is carbon dioxide. That gas is travel through this delivery tube and reaches to the lime water. That carbon dioxide changes lime water into milky white. I told you in anaerobic respiration what happens, yeast changes glucose to ethyl alcohol, energy and carbon dioxide. Those are the products produced in this process. And the heat is we sense the heat also inside this conical flask. You can do this experiment at your school also. Okay. And now I want to show you one more experiment, that is another anaerobic respiration experiment. The materials required are sugar, water, plastic bottle, rubber band, yeast. First, what we have to do, we have to prepare sugar solution or glucose solution. Yeah, now sugar solution or glucose solution is ready. They are pouring, is pouring the sugar solution in a bottle. Add 3 to 5 grams of yeast to the sugar solution. That is yeast which is adding. And close the mouth of the bottle with balloon. Like this. What do you observe? What happens to the balloon over time after 1 hour, 2 hours? The balloon should, what is happened there? Balloon swollen or the gas are reached into the balloon. The balloon is filled with the gas. That gas is carbon dioxide. I told you that carbon dioxide is released in anaerobic respiration also. See this. This is the aerobic respiration process and this is anaerobic respiration process. What happens in both the processes? Glucose molecule first divided into pyruvic acid, that is glycolysis process. Here energy released some amount. What happens if pyruvate, if oxygen is not available to the pyruvate, that performs anaerobic respiration. Anaerobic respiration means fermentation process. Generally, we called that fermentation in our native language, puliya bettadam. Okay. Because of this fermentation process, lactic acid is produced and energy is produced. If the living organism is lactobacillus bacteria, in that bacteria lactic acid. If the living organism is yeast, if the living organism is yeast, in the yeast, if anaerobic respiration occurs, glucose molecule changes into ethanol or ethyl alcohol. Carbon dioxide and energy is also produced. If glucose is changes to pyruvic acid, if the pyruvic acid got oxygen, in the presence of oxygen, pyruvate changes into carbon dioxide and water, and energy also released. This is happens in plants and animals. The process occurs in our body is this. This is the aerobic respiration process which which our cells are doing continuously. If we do vigorous exercise, fast exercise, if we do fast physical activity, our body not only performs aerobic respiration and our muscles of our body sometimes perform anaerobic respiration also. Okay, children? This is the process and I want to show with the flow chart. What happens? Glucose divided into by the process of glycolysis, pyruvate. If pyruvate is supplied with oxygen, if pyruvate in presence of oxygen, it participates in oxidative decarbonation. That is Krebs cycle. I told you electron transport occurs in mitochondria. Finally, one glucose molecule gives 38 ATP molecules. If pyruvate in absence of oxygen, fermentation process occurs. Because of this fermentation, in some organisms, lactic acid produced like lactobacillus. If it is yeast, it produces ethanol or ethyl alcohol. Now let us see the examination point of view question. What are the differences between aerobic and anaerobic respiration? What is the main difference between these two respiration? Of oxygen, it occurs in absence of oxygen. Complete oxidation of glucose occurs here. Incomplete oxidation occurs here. End products are water and carbon dioxide. What are the end products here? Ethyl alcohol or lactic acid also sometimes in some organisms. Carbon dioxide. If one glucose molecule is oxidized in aerobic respiration, 38 ATPs we get. What happens here? 2 ATPs are produced only. That means less amount of energy produces here. Here, how much energy is produced in kilocalories? 686 kilocalories of energy is released here. What happens here? 56 kilocalories of energy released. In aerobic respiration occurs in all animals and plants. Anaerobic respiration occurs in yeast and lactobacillus bacteria. Okay, children. I told you before that what happens if we do vigorous exercise, continuous exercise, fast exercise, we feel pain in muscles. Does what happens to our muscles? Does adequate oxygen reaches muscles that time? That time means in fast when we do the physical activity fastly or doing vigorously for longer time, what is being formed in the muscles? I told you lactic acid is produced in the muscles because of anaerobic respiration. Because of lactic acid, we feel pain in our muscles. The accumulation of lactic acid, we feel pain in our muscles. If lactic acid produces, if we perform the activity longer time, the lactic acid percentage increases in our blood. Because of that only we are getting pain. Okay, what we have seen up to yet: cellular respiration, a structure of mitochondria, aerobic respiration, and anaerobic respiration. Children, please answer these questions and write the answers for these questions and send the answers to your teacher. Write the procedure to be followed to test the production of carbon dioxide during anaerobic respiration. Describe the structure of mitochondria with the help of diagram. Differentiate between aerobic and anaerobic respiration. Explain the process of aerobic respiration. That means steps in aerobic respiration. What happens if we do vigorous exercise for longer time? Okay, children, I think you all understood the topic and write the answers for these questions. And I want to show some competitive exam type questions which are helpful for NAS or what is the role of diazine green solution in anaerobic respiration in yeast? I told you experiment with yeast. I explained you about the experiment. What is the role of diazine green solution in that experiment? It activates anaerobic respiration in yeast, helps in checking the presence of oxygen in yeast solution, helps in identifying carbon dioxide release, accelerate the work of liquid paraffin solution. What is the correct answer here? It helps in checking the presence of oxygen in yeast solution or glucose solution. So option B is correct. Here, match the item 1 components with item 2. What is item 1? Item 1 is lactic acid plus carbon dioxide in item 1A. Item 1B, carbon dioxide plus water. C, ethanol plus carbon dioxide. Lactic acid plus carbon dioxide releases by which living organism here? Algae, lactobacillus, yeast. Lactobacillus releases lactic acid. So that is why A should be matches with 2. Carbon dioxide and water, algae. Ethanol and carbon dioxide, yeast. So what is the answer? A2, B1, C3. So correct option is B. These type of questions given in NAS, National Achievement Survey, and also summative assessment. Analyze the graph and find the incorrect one. What this graph is showing? A graph showing effect of vigorous exercise on the concentration of lactic acid in blood. If we do vigorous exercise for longer time, what happens in our blood? Lactic acid level is increases. If lactic acid level is increases in our blood, we feel pain. Then after we get rest position, after some time our pain will reduces. When we feel relaxed from the pain means, if we take oxygen more and more, that oxygen immediately breaks down this lactic acid. Then only we feel free from the pain. Oxygen breaks, when the oxygen breaks this lactic acid into carbon dioxide and water, then only we feel free from the pain. Okay. Here the question is on this graph. After 9 minutes vigorous exercise resulted in high levels of lactic acid in blood. This graph shows that one only. After 55 minutes of time, lactic acid level decreased in blood. After 55 minutes, this is from 0 minute to 60 minutes here showing in the. After 55 minutes, the lactic acid level is decreased actually here. Highest concentration of lactic acid is 101 mg. Yes, 101 mg. Graph shows the aerobic respiration in muscles. D option is aerobic. This graph showing aerobic respiration. Is it correct, children? Because of aerobic respiration, what are the products produced? What are the substances produced? Water and carbon dioxide. Lactic acid produced in which respiration? Anaerobic respiration. So this is the wrong answer. Option D. We have to find the incorrect one. So that is why wrong answer is D. Okay, children. This is about cellular respiration, aerobic and anaerobic respirations in yeast, and also the cellular respiration, that is aerobic respiration in plants and animals. I will meet you again with another topic. Until then, bye. Thank you.